We got 4 teams on bye this week. Every running back to start or sit, starting with the Minnesota and Cleveland game. This is going to be Jordan Mason in the C tier. Bad matchup. Cleveland Browns, obviously, they're very good against the run. They're very good against running backs in fantasy football. They've allowed the 3rd least amount of points to fantasy football running backs this year. And so it's a tough matchup for Jordan Mason. We're going to have him in the C tier because of that, but he's just, fact of the matter, he's going to get every carry there. And so he will be a start for us this week. Xavier Scott in the H tier, we are not going to start. Again, it's a tough matchup. We wouldn't start more than one running back anyways, but in this case, Jordan Mason is going to get all the work there. On the Cleveland side of the ball, Nathan's boy, Quinshon Judkins in the B tier. He keeps rising for us. At this point, he's a weekly starter. He's getting 16 to 20 carries every game. He has high touchdown upside. He's a bell cow back there. And at this point, you're starting him every week. And so he's a must-start for us in the B tier this week. Jerome Ford, we do not have ranked, and so we're not going to start him. But that Minnesota-Cleveland game, you're really just starting Jordan Mason and Quinshon Judkins in this game.
So Houston and Baltimore, your big news, obviously, Woody Marks is getting a ton of increased usage. His snap share week over week has gone up incrementally since the start of the season, which is really encouraging. And again, after a 27-point game, I think you gotta show him his respect and give him credit. And I think he's effectively the running back 1 there. I think he's the top option. So we're gonna have him in the C tier as a must start in a matchup that is very, very friendly, going up against Baltimore, who has allowed the most amount of points to running backs this season. They're also very good for wide receivers. They're just a bad defense overall. They've had a ton of injuries. That's why I'm also going to list Nick Chubb as a meh. Even though Nick Chubb's usage has gone down significantly and he's going to have a lower floor, we are going to rank him in the D tier this week because, again, there are just so many injuries right now across the league, and there are a good number of bye weeks. He still had 13 carries last week. So even though his snap share went down from 52 to 42% against Tennessee, this week against Baltimore in a matchup where you're probably going to see more points scored than you usually see with Houston over the course of this entire season, if they get any short yardage or goal line opportunities, I would bet they're probably going to give those opportunities to Nick Chubb because he's the big body running back there. So again, if this guy gets a goal line carry, he's going to have 10 plus points. He had 8 points last week with Woody Marks putting up 27. Right now, with as much pressure that CJ Stroud is under at the moment as a passer, they kind of have to have a lot of success in the run game. So both of these guys are going to be viable options. Definitely trust Marks a lot more this week. Chubb's going to be a meh. Derrick Henry on the other side, still have to start him. 3 disappointing weeks. He's costing me games in the Flock League right now, so I understand. But you can't not start Derrick Henry, especially now with Lamar Jackson out. They're going to have to probably slow this game down or try to slow this game down and run the ball quite a bit with Derrick Henry. We'll see, but he's going to be in the B tier as a must start. Justice Hill has had a couple of productive games this season. He had 20 plus points last week. He had 7 points against Detroit. A lot of this is garbage time usage, in the fourth quarter when they're down multiple possessions. So I think it's kind of fool's gold with Justice Hill if you're looking to start him this week. So we're going to list him as a sit. He is in the G tier.
All right, next matchup, we're going to talk about, of course, Miami and Carolina. Devon Achane, best running back in this matchup, is going to be in the A tier. He continues to produce, continues to have receiving upside. You don't have Tyreek Hill there now. Maybe that gives you positive outlook on Devon Achane's receiving upside as well. He might get a few more targets there per game. So he's going to be in the A tier for us. And then this is a matchup where you're just not starting the running backs, or the backups. You're only starting the starters here. And so Ollie Gordon's going to be in the G tier. He continues to get a decent amount of work per game, coming in the red zone sometimes, getting some of the short yardage things. But at the end of the day, he's only getting 25% snap share. And he's not probably going to have a role that's worth anything because of the lack of receiving upside. And also because, Devon Achane is still the lead back there and getting most of the carries. And so while he is still fantasy relevant, it's not to the point where you can start him by any means. So he's going to be in the G tier for us. And a good matchup for Carolina. Miami's actually allowed the 7th most amount of points this year to fantasy football running backs. And so Chuba's been a little bit disappointing the last couple weeks, but this is a good matchup for Chuba. And so you are going to start Chuba Hubbard this week in the B tier for us. Again, a great matchup for him. Rico Dowdle's not going to be a start for us yet. We'll say sit in the F tier. But do keep in mind that Rico Dowdle's usage has continued to creep up, and his red zone usage has continued to creep up. He hasn't really had a ton of fantasy points yet, but if he does continue this trend, it might be something where Rico Dowdle becomes maybe somewhat flexible. I don't know. So didn't do well last week, but we're going to keep an eye on him moving forward. And we'll see if he continues to get 40+% snap share. He could be a guy in future weeks that you think about plugging into your flex spots with bye weeks.
So Vegas and Indy for Jency and JT respectively. All right, this is actually a tough matchup for both of these guys. But you're going to have to start both of them. Obviously, they're both looking like premier running backs with a ton of volume. Even though Vegas and Indy are both very stout against the run defense is very solid. JT, I mean, again, you had a 50-yard touchdown run called back because A.D. Mitchell was the biggest idiot on the field. He was the biggest idiot of the week in the NFL. But JT, I mean, he was tearing up the Rams, and they have a very good run defense as well. So I think he's going to be fine this week. Is he going to have 35-point upside? It's JT. Who knows? He's in the S tier. You feel good about him regardless. Same with Genty this week. He had a great week last week against the Chicago Bears, who again, when you're talking about run defense, don't have like a very great run defense or anything like that. This is tougher against Indy, but we're still going to rank him in the A tier. Anybody beyond that, again, this is a simple matchup. It's Genty and JT. It's no one else after that.
Flipping to a matchup where it's actually two good matchups for both these teams. Cam Scadaboo playing against the New Orleans Saints team has allowed the 8th most amount of points to running backs this year in fantasy football. So he's going to be in the B tier. I mean, he continues to get 20 to 25 touches a game. Like elite usage for Cam Scadaboo. And no Malik Neighbors there. I think it's going to hurt that offense overall. It could be a positive for Scadaboo in terms of his touches. But it's pretty clear they're going to run their offense around Cam Scadaboo. And so he's a must-start, and we're going to rank him pretty aggressively for the rest of the season probably. Devin Singletary's going to be in the G tier for us. I mean, realistically, I don't think anybody else is going to do anything in this offense from a running back standpoint, maybe until Tracy gets back. So I'm going to put him as a sit this week in the G tier. On the New Orleans side of the ball, the Giants have allowed the 5th most amount of points to fantasy football running backs this year. So Alvin Kamara is going to be in the C tier, moving him down kind of week by week to see if he does ever get on track. More targets last week. I think he had 5 targets last week. But at the same time, you still have to start Kamara with where you drafted him. Kendrick Miller, I'm actually going to have as a meh this week, in a week where we're going to be obviously pretty selective with the guys we put as mehs on running backs, just because you can't typically plug in running backs that are second strings. Kendrick Miller's a guy that got 11 carries last week and had a touchdown, so he got red zone carries as well. And so if you do need to plug Kendrick Miller in your lineup this week because you are decimated by bye weeks, we have 4 teams on bye this week, he's going to be one of the top options to do that at running back. He's one of the best backup options right now if you need to start him. And so Kendrick Miller in the F tier, Kamara in the C tier, Scadaboo in the B tier, and Devin Singletary in the G tier for this matchup.
Then you got Dallas and the Jets. Javonte Williams looking like one of the better fantasy running backs this season. I think that's going to continue with how productive Dallas's offense has been. They're really leaning on him exclusively as a bell cow running back there. He's looking really great, getting consistent touchdown opportunity as well. Must start in the A tier. Same with Breece Hall. I do think Breece Hall's floor is quite a bit lower than a guy like Javonte. We are going to have him in the A tier this week, though, because going up against Dallas, they're one of the worst defenses in the leagues. And then Breece Hall, we're going to have him in the A tier this week as well. He does have a lower floor, but in a matchup against Dallas, who has one of the worst run game defenses in the league, they've allowed the 6th most amount of fantasy points to running backs. You're definitely excited about starting him and optimistic that he's going to go in and have double digits comfortably. Anyone beyond that, Sanders and Isaiah Davis taking over for Braylon Allen, who just went on IR. None of those guys are comfortable starts.
For this matchup, Denver versus Philadelphia. Look, J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, that split is starting to come a little bit closer. I would still say I'm more comfortable starting J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to put him in the B tier this week than I am R.J. Harvey, who I'll put in the D tier. And so J.K. Dobbins will have as a start, R.J. Harvey as a sit. It's a fine matchup against Philly. Running backs have done okay against them. On the Philadelphia side of the ball, Saquon's still going to be in the A tier, even though, he's really not been like Saquon this year so far. A.J. Dillon's going to be a sit for us. Saquon's a must start. So J.K. Dobbins and Barkley, are the must starts in this game. Again, R.J. Harvey, you can kind of plug in at your own discretion. He's definitely one of the better backups or 1B backs in the league right now. And I think Harvey eventually might end up flipping with Dobbins and being the guy to start there. It's just a matter of if we continue to see that snap share move in Harvey's direction like we saw last week.
So Tennessee and Arizona, honestly, the only good running back that I feel comfortable starting this week is going to be Tony Pollard, and a decent matchup against Arizona, who's allowed the 10th most amount of points to running backs this season so far. Julius Chestnut beyond that, again, no one you're starting in Tennessee at running back beyond Tony Pollard. Pollard alone has still a pretty low floor. He's touchdown or bust. He's a super ugly flex, but he's pretty much a must flex this week with all the bye weeks and injuries. With Arizona, this is what a lot of people are going to want to know about. Do I start DeMercado? Do I start Michael Carter? What do we do now that Benson is on IR for 4 to 6 weeks? This week, we're going to be conservative, and we're going to say sit both of them. Tennessee does allow a decent amount of production to running backs. You've seen the last couple of weeks, Marks had like 27 points, and before that, JT had 39. I'm just asking you, do you trust DeMercado or Michael Carter this week? And if you were to guess which one it was going to be, like, who would you guess? Because I honestly, for us, You've got DeMarcado, who's got the passing down sets, the passing down ability, and Michael Carter last year in the last 2 games of the season had a couple of high volume games where he had like 10 and 15 points. I don't really know what this is going to look like this week. This could just be a really, really ugly game. And realistically, you're not super excited about starting either one of these guys. Honestly, with the amount of injuries that are going on right now and with the bye weeks, I will list both of them as meh, but we don't feel good about starting either of them this week. If you can help it, I would sit both of them until we see what that running back room is going to look like after this matchup against Tennessee and we learn a little bit more. But until then, again, I think you're talking about a really, really low floor outcome for either one of these guys if they're sitting in your flex.
The Tampa Bay-Seattle game is going to be interesting this week because it looks like Bucky Irving's not going to play. Rashad White becomes a must-start at that point. We're going to rank him pretty aggressively in the B tier. Sean Tucker, on the other hand, I think a lot of people are going to be tempted to start. Or maybe flex. I'm still going to put him. We weren't putting Rashad White really as a start before this, and I don't think Sean Tucker will be necessarily a start. We're going to put him in the G tier. Obviously, he has some upside there if Bucky Irving's absence is going to be long-term. But a decent matchup for both of these teams. There are also yellow lights all across the board for this matchup, and so fine starts either way. Seattle, I think we're going to go ahead and say start Kenneth Walker as well. Put him in the B tier. Zach Charbonnet we'll put in the C tier as a meh. I just am really not comfortable starting Zach Charbonnet, whereas with Kenneth Walker, I am. Charbonnet continues to get great volume, so if he can start turning that volume into points, I think he's going to become a start every week for us. But right now it's Kenneth Walker that's doing more with less, and Charbonnet's doing less with more. And so until that changes, like I would rather have the fantasy points. That's the important part, and it's got to be Kenneth Walker. So Kenneth Walker and Rashad White in the B tier for us in this matchup. Sean Tucker's going to be in the G tier. Zach Charbonnet in the C tier, and again, a fine matchup for Tampa Bay and Seattle both.
Yeah, then we got Detroit and Cincinnati. Part of the reason Cincinnati has allowed the second most amount of points to running backs this season is the last couple of weeks. They have been just absolutely manhandled in the first quarter, and then the opposing team just runs the ball for the rest of the game. I would expect something similar this week with Detroit, where they just come out guns a-blazing. They probably throw the ball, put this game on ice, and then run it after the first quarter and not stop running it. Gibbs and Monty, I think, are both going to have very good days. S tier for Gibbs, C tier for David Montgomery. Feeling good about flexing Montgomery this week. I'm very comfortable with that. Chase Brown, on the other hand, going to be in the C tier with David Montgomery. I feel less good about him because you got a neutral matchup against Detroit's run defense. And oh, by the way, even though he's the number one option there, no one in that offense can produce at the moment. He did have, he salvaged his week again last week because he is getting volume. He had 10 points. He's getting some receiving work, some checkdowns from Browning. If he can get a touchdown, again, he's very Tony Pollard-esque at this point. If he gets a touchdown, he'll save your day. If he doesn't, you're like, dang, that was a really ugly flex option. So with Chase Brown, don't feel as good about him. I think his ceiling is a lot lower than a guy like Monty, who's in the C tier for Detroit, but still got to start Chase Brown this week.
In the Washington-Los Angeles Chargers matchup, look, the Washington running backs have straight up been disappointing. Corey Krosky is at best a meh for us. He was a little bit banged up going into last week. And, you know, we still continue to see the utilization from a running back perspective on the field, where Corey Krosky is only getting 35% of snaps. And so he had 7 points last week. You don't really feel comfortable starting that. He's a meh. Jeremy McNichols is probably the running back 2 there, according to usage. And he's a meh. He had 1 point last week on 33% snap share. So it's like none of these guys are really producing. Not to mention it's a bad matchup this week. You know, honestly, I'm probably just going to go sit for both these guys. I don't want to start any of these guys. I don't want to start Chris Rodriguez. They're all going to be – I don't want to start these guys. I don't want to start Washington running backs no matter what. Hampton, on the other hand, for the Los Angeles Chargers, A tier, must start. Obviously, he's getting elite usage. This will probably end up being a shootout. They're probably going to be throwing the ball out to Hampton. Hampton's a pretty integral part of that receiving game at this point. And so he's going to be a start for us this week, and he's going to be in the A tier. Hassan Haskins, we don't have ranked. He's obviously going to be a sit for us. He is the backup running back for Amari Hampton going forward with the Najee Harris injury, but it does look like Amari Hampton's going to get 90% plus of the workload there, and so he's going to be a must start every week for that reason, and there's not really going to be anybody else in that Chargers backfield we're going to start.
Yeah, then we got New England and Buffalo. Ramondre and Henderson both going to be in the D tier again this week. I mean, you saw in week 3, Gibson and Ramondre both combined for like 3 fumbles. You saw Henderson's snap usage go up to 46%, and they were like, week 4, yay, let's get Ramondre back into the offense. Let's get him to fumble the ball more, give him more snap share, and get Henderson back down to 30%
They
work.
suck. The Patriots suck.
They absolutely suck. 12 points for Henderson last week. He salvages a day with a goal line carry, but he only had 7 carries compared to the 11 that he had against Pittsburgh. Not feeling great about that, and you're not feeling great about Ramondre either, whose snap share is up. It's at 57% 30% compared to the 36 the previous week, but he's so inefficient with his work and his volume and his opportunity that it's just really, really ugly either way. Flip a coin. You tell me who's going to get the touchdown this week. James Cook, must start, S tier this week. Great matchup going up against New England, who's allowed a decent amount of points to running backs this season. Everyone beyond that, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, they're all insurance plays.
And then the last match of the week, the Kansas City-Jacksonville game. Look, if you want to start one of the Kansas City running backs, go right ahead. But you're basically guessing which one is going to get a touchdown if either of them get touchdowns on a week-to-week basis, with Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. Brashard Smith's getting a lot of the receiving work. Isaiah Pacheco sometimes gets the red zone carries. Kareem Hunt's getting all the short yardage stuff and a lot of the third down stuff. So it's like, okay, who's actually going to be on the field? Look, I'll put them as men as we have in the D tier. If you want to start one of them, go for it. I don't feel comfortable starting these guys, to be honest with you. On the Jacksonville side of the ball, though, I am comfortable starting Travis Etienne, who's in the B tier for us this week against Kansas City. Kansas City, obviously, a pretty decent run defense. Although against fantasy football running backs this year, they've actually allowed the 9th most amount of points to fantasy football running backs. So not as bad a matchup as you would think. Etienne, going to be in the B tier. I think I would start him this week, and then Tootin's just going to be a sit for us in the F tier. So that's all the running backs for this week, of course, minus the Thursday night game. But if you guys enjoy the video, please drop a like. And make sure you're subscribed. Hit the subscribe button. We're going to have this video every week for the rest of the season so we can walk you through, as you navigate bye weeks, who you should be starting and sitting. If you'd like to check out our rest season rankings, updated rankings, we got them for free for you on the site. Go check out the link in the pinned comment. You can also plug your team into our My Teams tool and see where you rank for your league right now. It's free. Just create an account with code domain. You can use all of our tools for free. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.